Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. Welcome to this latest JIB webinar. My name's Roger Horn and I'm Head of Membership at JIB. Today, our webinar is going to focus on the importance of social value in public procurement. And I'm sure you've heard social value has become much more prominent since the autumn of last year and the issue of the Public Procurement Notice 0620 and its mention in the construction playbook. This new approach by government and government departments and local authorities will mean more opportunities for SMEs to win contracts by demonstrating the full extent of the value they generate. Value for money will still be important, of course, but a bidder's social value score will be incorporated into the assessment of contracts. To help you navigate through this complex maze and perhaps dispel some myths, I want to introduce our speakers today, Terry Brewer and Chris Harling from the Social Value Portal. I won't talk very much about the Social Value Portal. I think they've got quite a bit of information to impart. In their session, they're going to take you through the main considerations that you need to make when you need to articulate your social value. And so the format today, we've got about an hour allowed. I'm going to hand over to Terry and Chris, who are going to take you through a fascinating sort of presentation on the subject. And then if we've got time at the end, we'll have some questions. I'm sort of urge you to use the Q&A sort of tab. And if we can't get to your questions today, we'll follow up with you sort of afterwards. So without further ado, and understanding we've got quite a bit to get through, Terry, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Roger, and good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Terry Brewer. I'm the Head of Public Sector Delivery for Social Value Portal. My background is local government procurement, so I was variously Director of Procurement or Chief Procurement Officer in a number of London boroughs and head of Procurement for London Fire Brigade as well. And I was also Local Government Association Deputy Chair of their National Advisory Group for Procurement and Chair of the Best Value Group for Social Value. So I'll just let my colleague Chris introduce himself now.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I would love to say I had quite as much experience there as Terry, but unfortunately not quite so much. So I work at the Social Value Portal as a business development executive, helping to inform prospective members of our services, how we can help you to measure and maximise your social value, and also helping with the onboarding process for new clients as well.
Thank you, Chris. You may not have the experience, but you've got something far more useful, which is youth. So I'll go for the youth personally. Just like to start off with just telling you a little bit about the Social Value Portal. So our main claim to fame is our measurement system, so the measurement of social value, which is called TOMS, Themes, Outcomes and Measures. And Chris will go through with you in a short while, setting out how we measure and value social value. But linked to the measurement system, we also have a procurement platform. So what that does is we work with a number of public sector organisations, and the portal enables bidders for public sector tenders and indeed private sector if they want to submit offers, social value offers, in an open, fair and transparent way, all in accordance with the EU procurement regulations and whatever replaces those coming up. Having worked in local government, I can also safely say that local government in particular, but I think public sector generally, is pretty rubbish at contract management. And that's not because we're not any good at it, it's just because resources never get put into it to do it properly. So you know, many a time I've taken a report to cabinet in a council saying, done this fantastic procurement, we need to make sure it's properly contract managed and we need somebody X cost to do that, and I'd be told no, you can't, we need the money savings now, so you can't have a contract manager for that. So it never gets done well. And if you add then add social value into the mix, and that's all got to be managed as well by the council, then that just adds to those issues. So what our tool does, it takes the winning bidder's social value offer and converts it into a management tool where we seek evidence from the winning bidder about what they've delivered, and to produce a RAG report for the organisation, setting out any what's on target and what's been missed. And then in addition, we've got a number of reporting methodologies we've got. So basically we can slice and dice the data in many different ways. So we can report on social value delivered by a project, by department, by location, or across the entire organisation. So it depends what you want. And then on top of that, we've got a range of advisory and consulting services as well. So these are some of our public sector customers. We're working with over 60 councils, local authorities now, and have a wide range of other organisations, including some health organisations now, housing, etc. And since, as Roger mentioned, the public procurement notice 0620, we're getting quite a few government departments and agencies coming to seek our assistance now, which is great. We've also got a number of private sector companies. The reason private sector come to us is mainly threefold. So firstly, some just want assistance with bidding, because public sector customers are asking for social value and they want assistance on how to bid for that. And if we're not conflicted, then we'll be able to assist. Equally, a number of companies now want to understand how they're spending their corporate social responsibility budgets and how well they're being delivered. And equally, there's a number of companies now under pressure from investors who want to invest in companies that are socially aware and giving back to society as well. So they want to track how they're doing so they can report back to their investors. In terms of our numbers, so we've had getting on for 3,000 projects now go through the portal, representing nearly £23 billion worth of contracts. And in those contracts, we've had nearly 235,000 hours of volunteering delivered, 3.7 billion local economic value delivered, nearly 9,000 jobs for registered disadvantaged people. And what we find on average is that in contracting, public sector organisations are able to get social value additionality of around 20%, and often much more than that. So in other words, if public sector organisation lets a contract for £1 million, it can expect to get up to 20%, probably over 20% social value additionality, not part of the contract cost. So this is additionality over and above the core contract requirements. That's a bit about us. I'm just going to hand over to Chris now so he can just explain to you how we measure social value and the TOMS framework. So over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much, Terry. And as Terry mentioned, I'm going to walk you through a bit more about what we're considering when we measure social value, talk you through the TOMS framework, which is our proprietary framework, and a little bit about the National Social Value Task Force as well. But what I want to start with is this example. Now, I do apologise, it is quite a crass example, but this highlights what we are considering when we measure social value quite well. Because when we measure social value, it's important to understand that we're more concerned about the how than the what. So let's say as a result of a decision that a new job is created, we're mostly concerned about who gets that job rather than the fact that that job has been created. So let's say on the one hand, we've got this person on the left. They come from very much your stereotypical nuclear family background. They've got a happy family, a good education, strong CV, no criminal record, let's say. Then on the other hand, let's say we've got this person on the right. Through no fault of their own, they've come from a much more troubled upbringing. Let's say, for example, they could have been a care leaver. Again, through no fault of their own, they may have left school at a younger age and not have secured as many GCSEs, particularly not English and maths, which, as you all are probably aware, are important for most job roles nowadays. And as well, they may have had or may have a petty criminal record that's likely to get worse if they don't get this job. And as I'm sure you can all see without having those numbers there, the social value of employing these two people is very different. This person on the left, their social value is just their salary, because if they don't get this job, they're likely to be already in the job anyway, that they can continue to earn money at. Even if they're not, they can probably find another job quite easily because they've got that strong CV. And even if the worst comes to the worst, they can probably live at home with a family member or friend until they get themselves back on their feet. This person on the right, however, is hugely valuable from a social value perspective. Not only are they getting their salary, which they're likely to spend locally because they're more likely to be a local person, but also due to that troubled upbringing and that troubled background they have, they were likely to be on some form of benefits previously, which can now be reduced or stopped as a result of them getting this job. There's also likely to be a reduction in that petty criminal record, which means less going out of magistrates' courts, which is a hugely costly process for the taxpayer. And finally, this person's likely to be mentally and physically happier and healthier as a result of getting this job. So when we consider all of these additional elements, all of these factors that would have happened anyway, we can attribute the social value of employing this person on the right to being £24,465 when we consider that additionality. And that's what we're considering when we measure social value. Could you move on to the next slide there, Terry? Thank you. So as Terry mentioned, Tom's framework is our framework, and I will go into that a little bit more detail in the next slide. But before I do so, I think it's important to highlight that the framework was created in collaboration with and is continuously reviewed by the National Social Value Task Force. Now, the task force is a collection of both private and public sector organisations that meet regularly to challenge the measurements within the framework and really force the discussion and develop the solutions for social value with the social value community. So as you can see, some example members on there, the likes of Balfour Beatty, who I believe are members of JIB. We've got the likes of Coventry City Council, Birmingham City Council, Transport for England as well, Transport for London, sorry, and the West Midlands Combined Authority, just to name some. And we ourselves, as the Social Value Portal, are members as well. So that's the National Social Value Task Force. And we also have the National Social Value Conference, which is our event that occurs yearly, which was in February this year, actually. But what I can do is we do make the sessions available for that on demand. And there are a number of useful sessions around social value for SMEs and social value for beginners as well. And I can make those available to Roger to share as well, if that's something that could be beneficial after the call. So in terms of the TOMS framework, the TOMS was created as a direct response to the UK's Public Sector Act of 2012. And it's called the TOMS framework because it is a list of 5 themes. And these are the themes that are created by the National Social Value Task Force. And they are the overall agenda that we want to see in society, the goals that we are working towards. Now, within each theme, there are then a number of outcomes. And these outcomes are specific areas that we want to work towards that allow us to see that that theme is being achieved. So let's take the example, the first theme there, jobs promoting local skills and employment. One of the outcomes within that theme is the outcome of more local people in employment. Now, each outcome then has a set of measures, and these measures are the specific areas that we can work towards, and these allow us to identify that that outcome is being achieved. So let's take the outcome of more local people in employment. One of those measures could be the number of young offenders employed on a contract. Now, each of those measures will then have a unit applied to it. So the unit in this case will be the number of people employed on a contract. And each unit, each measure has a proxy value applied to it. In this case, 24,465. Now, these proxy values are the result of months of work by our research and development team, who are researching the Green Book methodology from HM Treasury. They are also researching Office of National Statistics data and other relevant public sector data. And they are researching all of those elements that I highlighted to you earlier, the additionality of these various decisions. And by researching these various sources and developing this, we can come to a proxy value that we have applied for these measures. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to be very confident, and it allows our clients to be very confident on what social value they have delivered. And it allows us to compare social value offerings. We can compare, for want of a better term, that apples versus apples offering. And then to work out the overall social value delivered across a contract or across a project, we would simply do the sum of all of those measures times by their applied proxy value to give us the overall social value on that contract. And then we also do have a number of plugins available within the TOMS. And these are made available to our member organizations when they are released. So some examples of the plugins we have a facilities management plugin, we have a real estate plugin, and we have a COVID-19 plugin as well. We are currently working on our central government framework, which Terry will come on to a little bit more in a moment. But the other thing that I like to point out here is we have this list of measures and outcomes at the bottom. And within the TOMS, we leave this list of measures quite long within there. And the reason for that is we treat the TOMS like a menu. Most people don't go into a restaurant and order everything off the menu. And by keeping that list of TOMS quite long, it allows organizations we work with to really pick out those measures that are, firstly, most applicable to them, most suitable for them. But secondly, pick out those ones that you can deliver at a low cost and at low additional work rate. Because we want this to be a low cost, and we don't want this to be a labor intensive exercise. So we do leave that list long so you can pick out those measures that are most suitable for your organization.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. So what I want to do now is just to talk about how the TOMS measures are applied in practice in a procurement. So just before I move on to that, what I just want to set out here is that social value is now included in vast majority of councils across the country now. And as you heard, we'll talk about central government in a moment, but most of the councils are including social value in their quality price matrices as a standalone item. So in other words, rather than just quality 60%, price 40% or whatever it is, you probably see quality 55, price 35, social value 10%. So you'll see that, and the reason for that is one, emphasising that social value is important to the organisation. So it's kind of bringing it out separately to emphasise that point. But also, if you just include it in quality, of course, if quality goes up and down in different tenders, then social value will go up accordingly, potentially with different tenders. So keeping it standalone at a standard rate is what we recommend, and indeed is what most councils and other public sector authorities are doing. What we're seeing over the last few years in particular is that the weightings set aside for social value are increasing. So if we'd been talking 18 months, 2 years ago, I'd have said 10% was a bit racy at the time. But what we're now seeing is a number of councils starting to move towards 20% as part of the quality price matrix, and indeed there's a few instances where councils have applied in certain procurement 30%. So you can see it's on the rise. Now what that means, of course, is that increasingly social value will be the determinant factor in who wins a procurement. So there's increasing pressure on public sector organisations to ensure that their social value model, the way they set it out in ITT documentation, the evaluation process they follow, and then ensuring they contract manage it well is very important to avoid challenge from a disgruntled bidder who perhaps felt they didn't get a crack of the whip, and the winning bidders not delivering on what they promised to deliver. So lots of pressure on public sector organisations to get that right now. The other thing we recommend quite strongly is that organisations should not be prescriptive in what they ask for by way of social value. In other words, don't go out saying you must give us 4 of those and 6 of those and 10 of those, because if bidders can't readily provide that, then they'll have to add to their costs to deliver that. So we recommend that organisations are non-prescriptive, so that give as much scope as possible to organisations to deliver social value and what they can deliver readily, so they don't need to add to costs to deliver that. So what the key message from that really is that we're seeing social value being asked for now almost across the entire public sector, particularly now central government's come on board. So it's swung the other way now that actually councils or others not asking for social value are going to become in the minority. So really suppliers bidding for for public sector work really need to have a good social value offering to ensure that they're in the game in terms of potentially winning that particular tender. I just want to run through how it works in practice from a procurement point of view. So this is a local authority procurement. This one happens to be Solihull Council. And they've gone out for slightly odd tender actually, but it's for tills for secondary and primary schools for their catering service. But nevertheless, the principles all apply across any procurement. So the contract value was estimated around £250,000 to £500,000 over 5 years. So these are Solihull's TOMs. So the important point to make here is that we don't dictate the themes. These are the public sector organisations' themes that they want. So we pick that up from the council plan or council objectives. And then what we do is we map relevant TOMs measures to the themes of the council. And that way, the members, the councillors, can see how procurement is helping, and indeed social value is helping to deliver some of the key objectives that the council's got to meet their requirements. So, as I say, these are Solihull's themes, and we've mapped these outcomes from our long list of TOMs measures. We've got around 200 plus to those particular themes. In terms of the quality price on this particular contract, quality was put in at 40%, price at 45%, and then social value was given a weighting of 15%, so relatively high. But the important point to note is that that 15% is then sub-weighted between quantitative and qualitative measures. So in other words, the value of social value you're offering is given 7.5%. So if you take the TOMs measures, you'll be invited as a bidder to say how many of each measure you want to offer. That will be multiplied by the proxy value for that particular measure. So if you remember on Chris's example, the local employment had a value of 24k, so assuming that's the value for that particular council. If you offer 2 local employment new jobs, then you'll get your social value quantitative bit will be 2 times 24,000, which is 48,000. The bidder offering the highest quantitative social value offer will get 100% of that 7.5% mark, so maximum marks, and all other bidders will be scored in relation to that on their quantitative submissions. Equally, you need to provide evidence about how you're going to deliver that social value. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to give you two disadvantaged people who've got disabilities. You need to demonstrate how you're going to deliver those two individuals, what where you're going to obtain them from, how you're going to recruit them, how you're going to support them, etc. So there's an evidence bit related to that, and that qualitative bit is 7.5%. So that's the other half of the sub-weighting for social value. So it's how much by way of social value you're offering, and the evidence associated with that about how you're going to deliver it that makes up the total 15% mark. This is what typically a bidder will see on the portal. So this one happens to be from Waltham Forest. So on the left, you'll have Waltham Forest TOMS measures that we've agreed with them. You'll then see, you can see there a unit column. So you would then as a bidder submit how many of that particular social value measure you want to offer. So in the target column there, and as you can see, it's got times in the top one times 37,000. So that number you put in that box is multiplied by that figure to, as I said, to arrive at a quantitative figure for your offer. You don't have to put in a social value offer against every measure. It's, as I say, it's what you consider to be relevant, proportional for you as an organisation to offer to given the value of the contract and the nature of the contract. So how's that then evaluated? So as I said, let's just run through that example. 15% sub-weighted, 7.5 between quantitative and qualitative. So as I said, the quantitative assessment is highest social value offer gets 100% of the mark, and then your offer will be divided by the highest social value offer and multiplied by 100. So in other words, it's almost the reverse of the lowest cost price formula that you're used to seeing. It's just the reverse in terms of who's the highest. And then in terms of the qualitative assessment, the council or public sector organisation will generally use the typical methodology that they use for qualitative assessment. So, you know, poor, fair, very good. So this type of evaluation, which I'm sure you're all very familiar, you know, 0 is unacceptable, 100 excellent. So on that range. And then the quantitative and the qualitative scores are then merged to give an overall score out of that 15% that's then included in the overall evaluation for that particular procurement. In the case we were looking at, that Solihull tender, they had 7 bidders. The greeny, so I'm slightly colourblind, but I think it's the greeny turquoisey column is the contract value, and the purple column is the social value offered. And that's not, so the purple column isn't part of the turquoise column. This is this additionality by way of social value, so over and above the contract cost. Now you can see on here that the bidder 5 is offering the most social value, 178k's worth. But actually the winning bidder was bidder 3. So bidder 3 had the overall balance in terms of price, quality and social value. So it's only the 3rd highest in terms of social value, but nevertheless, you know, the council got the right balance in terms of cheapest price and best quality in overall terms, and £82,000 worth of social value. So that's how a procurement will be taken through and evaluated and measured. So hopefully that was clear and helpful about how it operates in practice. A number of case studies. I won't go through these in details now. We can provide more information on these, but you know, West Midlands Combined Authority, they completed 25 tenders through the portal. What they're seeing is that of the bidders, 42% bidders were local to the West Midlands region, and 20% of those were voluntary community organisations, and 50% local one. And overall, they're seeing 20% social value add, which is kind of in line with what we were saying. And then Star Procurement, so that's an organisation that does procurements on behalf of Rochdale, Trafford, Thameside and Stockport councils. they've seen overall 27% social value add on their procurements that they're doing, and they've seen over £22 million of the social value unlocked. So, you can see organisations are genuinely seeing the benefit of asking for social value in a structured way and getting key outcomes that they can report on and go back to councillors and others and set out how social value through procurement is supporting the organisation's objectives. Just a little bit about central government. I'm not sure how many of you deal with central government work, but they've taken a slightly different approach, and we're adapting our methodology that's used throughout local government and other public sector organisations to fit with the government approach. So as Roger said, PPN 0620 was issued at the tail end of last year, and that sets out a social value model that is being used. They've got 5 themes they're working around. So again, coming back to the themes, they're not miles away from where we are. So one is COVID-19 recovery. They've then got one on tackling economic inequality. So as you can see, they're creating new businesses, new jobs, new skills, etc. Fighting climate change, equal opportunities, and well-being. So those are the government themes that they are working to. And what we've done in the same way as we said for Solihull, we're mapping our TOMS measures to the government's themes. So we've put in some sub-themes against each of the government's themes where appropriate, and then we're putting in our measures against that, so that we've got a clear methodology that will apply to government's procurements as and when they come out with those. The main difference is that between government and local government is that whilst weightings are fairly common, so government says social value be a minimum weighting of 10% of contracts over the government overdue threshold, which on top of my head I think is around about 120k. But what they want is that qualitative will be 100% of the mark. So in other words, it won't be a quantitative-qualitative split. Quality will be 100% of the marks. So what we're offering, or what we're saying to government, is you still need to get bidders to submit quantitative numbers, even though you're only measuring on qualitative. The reason being is that, one, you need to still be able to report on what social value has been delivered. So that you can go back as government or by a department or whatever and say, across all our procurements, we've had X number of apprentices delivered, we've had Y carbon reductions, and this has got a social value of X. But equally, you need to be able to contract manage the offers that have been made. So unless you know that a bidder has submitted that they're going to offer you 4 apprentices, for example, it's really difficult to contract manage that. So we're recommending to government, and certainly some of the departments we're talking to at the moment recognise that whilst it won't be evaluated directly, we will still ask for quantitative measures so that they'll be submitted on the portal, but the overall scoring will be all 100% qualitative approach. So what this is sort of our recommendation at the moment, and we're just working this through with various government departments. So what we're suggesting is that you saw the 5 themes that the government has set out. So we're suggesting that there's a qualitative response from bidders per theme, a maximum of 2 A4 size of paper to keep it manageable for both bidders and evaluators. As we said, the quantitative target should match the deliverables outlined. And then we're also recommending if a contract's over $500,000, then in addition to just asking general questions about a particular theme, there should be a direct delivery plan asked for, which sets out more detailed requirements about how social values organised in the organisation to be reported on, etc. Sorry, that's just the 5 themes. So the sorts of things that should be included in qualitative responses from bidders are who's going to be responsible for delivery of social value in your company. You need to be able to provide confidence that you can identify, source, deliver and report on the social value being offered. Excuse me. You need to be able to say you've got credible processes to deliver what you're offering. You need to look at the government social value model. So they've published the social value model with various themes in it, and you really need to make sure your proposal counts within the context of the themes, so that you can demonstrate how what you're offering is going to help deliver against those themes, and how you're going to make best use of the opportunities to contribute to sustainable social value outcomes from the procurement. And then there's a bit more detail around delivery plans. So again, leadership, what resources are you going to deploy? What are your processes internally for managing the delivery, monitoring it, etc., etc. And then if on a regional basis, because the government is looking to deliver social value on a regional basis, so each government department will determine which regions or region it's looking for support in, how you're going to engage with local stakeholders, etc., etc. So as I say, the delivery plan is only for contracts over £500,000. So this won't be on all of them, but these are the sort of things you'll be expected to consider and think about in your responses. So I just want to go in now, just what does a good bid look like? How do you put in a good social value offer? The social value portal, we've produced a couple of guides on getting the most out of social value. One is aimed at buyers to make it easier for, give them tips on making it easier to make social value available for SMEs, etc. And then the other guide is aimed specifically at SMEs and VCSEs to really provide you with some assistance in what to think about in terms of preparing yourself for responding to social value requests from public sector organisations. These are available on our website, so please go on there, and perhaps Chris, we can just make a note to give Roger the link to those on our website so you can easily get access to those. In terms of the guide for SMEs, there are 7 steps. I'm going to go through those now, so I won't read them out on this particular slide. So I'll go straight into the key areas. This one I think is really about getting ready. So really get to know what you can do about social values, because I think what you don't want to do is wait until the tender comes out. It's got a 2-week deadline on it, and you think, oh, we've got to provide something on social value. How are we going to do that then? It's really better to have prepared yourself, thought it through. What can you as an organisation offer by way of social value? And by all means, use good ways to use the TOMS framework as a guide to looking at what sort of measures will public sector organisations be using, and therefore what of that list of measures might we as a customer be able to provide. Second key point is really knowing your customer. So different councils, as we've heard, central government, different organisations would approach social value differently. A lot now, the vast majority will be using the TOMS methodology, so you'll start to see that much more, but nevertheless how they're applied and what particular measures particular councils might focus on, for example, will differ according to their own local priorities. So if you're aiming at particular customers, really get to know what's in their local plan, for example, so you can start to think about, well, what social value can I offer that fits in with the council's plan? if they're holding events on social value, then make every attempt to attend, because that gives you good insight as to the approach that that particular organisation is intending to take to social value. I'm sure you all do this, but make sure you receive the alerts to tender opportunities so you know they're actually coming up. Then get involved. So if you're an SME, it's quite possible that a larger procurement's going out that's more suitable for large organisations to respond to. But nevertheless, knowing that social value is important to councils now means that those large companies are proactively looking at how can we get support from local SMEs and VCSEs to deliver what we need to deliver. So they're proactively doing that. I was talking to a large construction company a few months back, and they said, in the past we would have had national contracts set up with Dewsons to provide timber and Blue Circle for cement. Now, if a contracts come up in a particular local area, we'll proactively look at who are the companies in that local area that we might be able to work with. So, take a proactive approach about identifying who those companies might be, who are the likely bidders, and try to get involved with them. And then, as I said, if unfortunately, generally public sector organisations aren't as good as they should be on pre-market engagement. It's something that's encouraged, and I'd certainly recommend it. But pressures of resources, etc., means that doesn't happen as often as it should. But if they are doing pre-market engagement, by all means, make sure you participate in that, because that's the best way of finding out what particular approach that organisation will be taking. Answer the question. I know it's, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but I can honestly say, sitting on the other side of the fence, as I have done in procurement, I can't tell you how many times bidders have answered the question they wished I'd asked, not the question that had been asked. And of course, if you don't answer the question, you're going to not get not be scored as high as you could do. So particularly making sure you know how social value is to be assessed. As I said, most buyers now will be using the TOMS methodology in one way or the other, but clearly if they're not, you need to know what process they are following and be able to respond to that. And I think also be wary about over claiming what social value you can deliver, because you need to put in a balance here about what genuinely you consider you can make by way of an offer. What you need to bear in mind is that social value offers will be contractualised by public sector organisations, so you will be held to them and contract managed on them. And what we're seeing also is that there's been a bit of a fear from quite a few public sector organisations about non-delivery of social value. So we're seeing quite a few include remedies in contracts now for non-delivery, particularly of social value. And the most popular one is liquidated damages. So in other words, they're saying if you don't deliver on this particular piece of social value you offer, we have calculated how much it will cost us as an organisation to deliver that ourselves, and we will deduct that from your invoice. So, making sure that you put in a balanced offer on social value and feel confident that you can deliver that is really important. So as I say, develop your offer. So once the tender's out, hopefully you've already got an idea of the sort of things you can offer as social value. But now you've got the actual tender out, you can see what the organisation's actual TOMs are that they're using, so you can develop your offer to be specific for that particular organisation. As I said, again, using the national TOMs as your checklist, and you might want to develop your own CSR strategy, corporate social responsibility strategy, to help with all of that. There's some key things that you'll need to think about your offer. So you can't just offer stuff you're doing in your headquarters offices, for example. So offers need to be contract specific. So it can only be delivered as a result of the contract that you're delivering, because otherwise what will happen is, we see companies offering putting in double glazing at their headquarters 50 times across 50 different procurements, which of course isn't the spirit of what we're looking at. So it's very clear that social value has to be delivered against that particular project or procurement, not what you're doing anyway as an organisation. Obviously, there's some simple things there about planning ahead and collecting data and evidence. I think as you deliver against your commitments you've made and you've been successful in winning the tender, make sure you collect that data and evidence about what you've delivered, because when you're asked, you need to produce that and make sure that you're not subject to any remedies under the contract. So collecting the data and evidence is really important. And then finally, just making sure you review, at the end of that project or once you've won a tender, review what you've done, perhaps produce a case study so that will help you think about future offers that you can make, what went well, what hasn't gone so well, so that you're better prepared for future tenders and to make sure you win those. And what does a good bid look like? So this is a typical sort of offer from a company. As I said, first of all, make sure that the target you're delivering is for that project only, so it's not something you're doing elsewhere. It has to be as a result of winning this particular tender. Make sure you submit a target that you can realistically deliver. Keep in mind the contract value. So as you've seen, typically what we're seeing is social value at 20% on average, sometimes more. So if you do your calculations, you find you're offering 150% social value, chances are you're over offering and you won't be able to deliver that. So think about what you can realistically deliver and make sure that your commitments are well evidenced about how you're going to do that and what procedures you're going to use. And then I won't dwell on this, but this is just to set out what does a good qualitative bid look like. So this sets that out. Some of the key points from that: produces examples of previous volunteering. So this is an offer to do some volunteering work. So sets out we've done it before, so we've got the experience of doing it. We've said who our VCSE partners will be. We've targeted a particular demographic and described the type of support that will be provided. So those are the sort of key things to think about including in your qualitative offer to make sure that you're going to get maximum marks on that part of the procurement evaluation. So I'm just going to hand back to Chris now briefly, just to quickly go through how we're going to support JRB members, and then we'll have some time for quick Q&A, hopefully. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Terry. So in terms of how we can support organisations like yourself, we've just put some details in here on SVP, Social Value Portal membership. And the reason for that is there is a number of different ways we can help organisations, and it very much does depend on your specific organisation. As we've touched on throughout the slides here, we can provide a lot of consultancy work to help support you strategy development, help support with bids, and various other options. So if there are any questions around specific areas that we can help with, please feel free to get in touch, and of course we can discuss those in your specific organizational context. But this is just an overview of what we can provide to most members that would want to, if they want to use our services. So involved with the membership of the Social Value Portal, the first thing you will get is a Social Value account, and this is your access to the Social Value Portal. It provides you with a number of live dashboards which detail your social value delivery across your organization's various contracts and projects, as well as corporate initiatives as well. And there's some screenshots of what those look like there on the right. Involved with that membership fee, we would, as Terry mentioned, also develop the TOMS framework around your organizational needs. We would tailor the themes of those TOMS to match with your targets and your goals, and ensure that everything that we are working towards is aligned with your organizational aims as well. As part of that membership, you would also get a dedicated social value advisor, And this is your assigned account manager who is helping you on your social value journey. So really working closely with your organization to ensure that your policies around social value are reflective of what the community needs, and to also ensure that any commitments around social value are being delivered to those communities. And finally, the membership options are there at the bottom, and this is for SMEs. So we have developed our SME offering recently, and that would be £3,000 per year for membership, or if you would like to sign up for a 3-year commitment, that would be £7,000 for those 3 years. And what we also have put forward is some social value portal surgery days. So we appreciate that this may not necessarily have answered all the questions you may have. Again, there may be specific questions on how we can support your organization, or specific questions around an area that we didn't cover today. And if there are those questions, we want to put on 2 SVP surgery days, which will be an opportunity to speak to an expert. So not only will myself or Terry be available for answers, but we will also invite a social value advisor. So if you have specific questions on any areas around the framework or how we can support you, they can assist with that. These sessions will also be tailored, as I've mentioned, around you. So we can focus on particular questions you may have, or if there are areas that a lot of people have a question on, we can tailor a session around that particular area. And finally, ongoing support as well. So with those sessions, we would aim to come up with outcomes, come up with goals moving forward that you can work on, that will help you on your social value journey, whether or not you decide to join the social value portal as a member.
Thanks, Chris. So that's us. Hope that was useful. Because I've been presenting, Roger, I've been keeping an eye on questions. So I don't know if you have, and I'm able to.
We've got a few sort of questions. So first of all, thanks for that was a fascinating sort of walkthrough, and what's quite a complicated sort of can be perceived as a complicated sort of subject, and the sort of support that you can offer. Let's just dive into the questions. We've got about sort of 8-ish sort of minutes sort of left. So we've got somebody asking about interested in direct employment via the use of agency, self-employed, and umbrella company employment. Is this something that's likely to be included in some kind of social value offer or measure, that sort of use of direct versus different types of sort of employment arrangements?
Do you want to pick that one up, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just got the question up in front of me there. So direct employment versus the use of agency, self-employed, umbrella company employment. So there are a number of measures on employment, and it's quite a broad answer because it ultimately depends on what you're trying to measure. With the various measures within the framework, there are measures around employment for, let's say, if that was a NEET, so someone who's not been in education or training. It's how you go to approach that employment. As we mentioned, we're more concerned about the how than the what when it comes to the social value and the TOMS framework. So if you are going through, let's say, a particular recruitment drive targeting people who are not in employment or training, or let's say on the flip side, a particular recruitment drive around people who are from a young offenders background, they will have specific measures within the framework that target those areas. And it's always important to be very clear, and it goes back to what Terry mentioned there about answering the question, because there are various differences within the framework depending on what you're trying to achieve there. So please make sure you're checking what drive it is you are trying to employ people through, and that will likely affect the proxy value because it will be a slightly different measure depending on what it is you're going through.
Okay, we'll try and sort of fit in a few more. We had a few questions in advance. So being a JIB member company means you have to adhere to a collective agreement. is this recognised as social value for contracts? As it's clearly above the living wage and obviously tackles workforce inequality.
Yeah, we have some measures that relate around those areas. Generally, they're record only, what we call record only measures. So they're ones where an organisation, public sector organisation, might be interested in seeing if companies are adhering to all those areas, and would ask for evidence about that. Because those things are actually quite difficult to measure from social value point of view at the moment, because they're not in Treasury Green Book data or Office National Statistics data. We haven't been able to put a measure together for those currently. As and when they do, then we will obviously put measures in. But so at the moment they're recalled only for the public sector organisations information.
Obviously there's more and more undertaking more kind of electrical, our sector, more electrical vehicle installation, solar panels, heat pumps and other low carbon technologies. Can this work or training be recognised in any way under one of these measures?
Chris, do you want to pick that one up?
Could you just repeat that? Sorry, Roger.
Yeah, sure. So as a sector, we're undertaking more electric vehicle sort of charging sort of point installations, solar panels, heat pumps, and other types of carbon sort of green technologies. Can any of this work be offset or recognised within the measures, or the training related to that be offset or measured within any of these sort of measures?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't like to say which specific measures they would fall into, because apologies, I don't quite have that detail off the top of my head. But we're doing a lot of work regarding our environmental measures. And it is something that with carbon offsetting and with the focus around the environmental drive at the moment, we are developing as well. So we do have a number of environmental measures within the framework. And absolutely, these are the elements that are included within there. Specific measures, like I say, I can't reel off the top of my head, but all very much included within the yes.
Yeah, no, sure. Okay, yeah, I think I'm just looking at the ones we've had in advance. So the health benefits under the LB benefits scheme, which include private medical, sick pay, employee assistance programs, and mental health services. Would these be taken into account? And have you any idea, this is getting a bit specific, what weighting would be given and how this is calculated? We're getting diving into the weeds a little bit. Did you get the question the first time? So we're not need to repeat that sort of question.
Yeah, that's a bit more of a specific question. And with that, I wouldn't like to misinform there. So what, if it's all right with you, Roger, what I think would be best for that question is if perhaps you could maybe fire me that question over afterwards. Yeah, of course, I can go back to our SVA team, find the answer for that, and then send it back through to you to share with the attendees.
Okay.
Just because I wouldn't like to misadvise on what, because that is quite a specific question.
Yeah, no, and these are very specific to JIB member companies, understandably. I suppose one of the last sort of questions before we sort of tie up, looking at the time, I mean, how would we need to evidence aspects of social value being met as a JIB member company? I mean, for instance, if we recognise that aspects of JIB membership that companies have to adhere to, collective agreement, perhaps picking up this specific point around health benefits, when we can allow you to answer that a bit more fully. Would, for instance, the JIB membership certificate being included as part of the bid be something that would be sort of recognised, as well as presumably the other elements of sort of narrative that you might have to include in a bid?
Well, I think against specific measures, it would help with your evidence that you know what you know what you're talking about, in a sense. Yeah. So if you're offering a particular social measure, and you're able to say, well, as a JIB member, we're doing this, and this, then that that adds to the weight of evidence that you're able to support what your quantitative element is offering. So I think, yes, that's, you can't just say we're a JIB member, that's it. But certainly by way of adding to the weight of evidence that you're giving, that's really helpful.
Sure. I had another question just sort of pop up there. Let me try and sort of pull it in sort of front of us. No, so I think I'm just looking at time actually, and time has run away from us. If anyone has any other questions, do feel free to email me. I can sort of pass them on to sort of Terry and Chris. This has been recorded, so it will be made available once we've processed it. It will be available through our sort of website, and we'll also send out a reminder sort of where you can find that. And we'll also pick up on the offer of surgeries and perhaps look at sort of potential sort of dates and what we could offer to sort of JIB members. So it just leaves me to say, thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for sort of joining us, and perhaps we'll talk again soon. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you,
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.